Two teams coming off of Final Fours look to get right back to it in a rematch of the biggest game of the year last year in a lot of ways.
Yes.
Houston, Auburn, let's get after it.
Yeah.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
It is a Locked On College crossover between the Houston Cougars and the Auburn Tigers. I'm Locked On Cougars Parker Ainsworth, joined by Zach Blackerby of Locked On Auburn. Thank you for making Locked On Cougars, Locked On Auburn your first, second, any listen today, because we're appreciating it all as the #1 sports podcast network in the world, Zach. You know who else is #1 are those Houston Cougars heading to Birmingham to play Auburn. You like that?
For now, Parker. For now, they're #1. We'll see what happens on Sunday. No, I mean, an electric game. Perfect segue by you, by the way. But fascinating game. I mean, these two teams, both in the Final Four a year ago, and now two totally different storylines coming out of it. Cougs, hey, we got a chance to win the whole dang thing. Auburn, you're going to recognize Tahaad, Pettiford, and that is it from last year's rematch, which is kind of wild.
I want to start on the wild differences here, though, because I do think that sets up expectations and sets up everything that we're doing today. We're going to make picks. We're going to talk about what could actually happen in the game, too.
Yes.
But you mentioned Tahaad Pettiford's the only Auburn Tiger we recognize in an Auburn uniform. But some of these guys, Keyshawn Hall, right? Houston's going to remember from his time at Central Florida, right? Sure. You could point out to Overton. Houston's going to remember from his time at Texas Tech.
Good point.
And then if you're really in the weeds, Sebastian Williams-Adams is a Houstonian, went to St. John's, big-time four-star prospect, who I believe started a game recently for Auburn as a freshman. It is early, and frankly, this is a much bigger test this weekend than they've had, Zach. But new coach, new roster, new vibes. What do the Tigers look like right now?
Yeah, I still think they're trying to find their identity, especially on defense. I mean, you mentioned SWA getting a start. Stephen Pearl, new Auburn head coach. Bruce Pearl's son. Maybe you've heard of him. But he's rolled out different starting lineups every game so far. And so is he trying different things for Houston? Is he trying different things in general? We'll see exactly what that looks like when we kind of get more data points. But, I think Auburn, I think they're trying to get Tahaad Pettiford going. I think that's certainly a part of it. And then two, a big thing is what can they do around the rim? You and I were talking off air earlier in the week. I think that's the most important thing in this game. Specifically when Houston has the ball, what does Auburn do to keep Houston out of the paint and away from the rim? Because that's been an issue for Auburn pretty consistently so far this season.
Well, and there's some irony there because, frankly, I'd argue that was a strength for Auburn a year ago with Janai Broome down there.
And Dylan Cardwell, right.
Yeah, and Janai Broome's not even the big guy, but you're right, he's like the power forward. The veteran leadership down there was impressive, and the complete 180 of it this year is interesting. Do you think that has been thus far because it's just new guys and gelling, or is that going to be a weakness all year for this group?
So even before the coaching change happened, my biggest concern was, okay, what are they going to do with the 5? I kept waiting for them to add more through the portal at the 5, and it just never happened. They got a lot of guys with kind of higher ceilings, and we'll see if they gel and kind of get better over the course of the season. We've seen baby steps so far, but Keyshawn Murphy is a big part of this. He came over in the portal from Mississippi State, and he's been hurt. He's expected to return on Saturday against Houston, and so that'll certainly help. Jovic, European player with this new trend of, European players coming to college basketball. I love it. It makes the product better. It's super, super fun. But he's taken some steps, but defensively, I think he's kind of had some issues. And so I think that's going to take some time. But does he take that step needed on Saturday? And then Emeka Oporum 7-foot guy that's got a chance to be great. But I think they kind of brought him in to be a project, to be kind of a future part of this team, not to make a splash right away, but he's done pretty solid in the minutes he's been given. What does that look like against Houston when guys are just as big as him and can kind of move him around a little bit? That to me is what's going to decide this game.
Well, and when you talk about what decides this game, and we'll make picks in a second and all of that, but I do think that in a big, hyper-competitive game like this, you're going to see Auburn lean into Tahaad a lot, right? Because he's quite literally been in this atmosphere, played against this defense, played against Kelvin Sampson before. And you and I talked before the game last year, and then casually afterwards, that was kind of a coming out party for him for a lot of America last year. What does round 2 look like? What is part 2? What's the sequel?
Yeah, I hope it's similar. I hope usually sequels aren't as good as the original, but I'm hoping this one is. You know, Tahaad splits when you look at home, like when he's at Neville Arena in Auburn and versus away, whether it's away at True Road or neutral, he's way better away from Neville. Whatever reason that might be, we kind of started calling him big game Tahaad towards the end of the year because in these big games is when he would step up. And obviously Houston was Auburn's first big game a year ago, and that's when we started seeing Tahaad Pettiford. And there's been some concern about how Tahaad has looked through the first 3 games. I mean, neither of these teams have really played anyone yet. This is going to be the first big test, obviously, for Auburn. I assume you would say the same for Houston. And I think I've been making the prediction when talking about this game throughout the week, like this is Tahaad's back. Tahaad's going to be back on Sunday. That's my big prediction. Bold take. I think he drops 20 on Sunday.
20 as a guard against Houston. He literally did it a year ago. I was about to say it's a really bold thing to say, but he's
done it. Right. Right.
So maybe it's not so bold. Do you think that because other guys are going to get it done and he like has to like make up for lost ground, or is he going to be the hot hand from the first possession?
I just think that's who he is, man. And these types of games is when he shines brightest. And I mean, you can say that's a weakness that he doesn't show up consistently or whatever. Like that's fine, but a big strength of Tahaad, and we saw it. He was a big part of Auburn's Final Four run a year ago. Is when the stage is the largest, which is going to be pretty large on Sunday. It's one of the better non-conference games in college basketball this year. I think Tahaad's going to have an opportunity. Him and Keyshawn Hall, as you mentioned, the former UCF guy. They have a chance to be one of the better scoring tandems in college basketball, and they have a chance to prove it against an incredibly stout defense, against an incredibly great team on Sunday. It's going to be in their backyard. It's probably going to feel like a home game for Auburn. At least we drove 2 hours. Y'all just went, like y'all stayed in Houston when we went over there, but right. At least ours feels somewhat neutral, but that's okay.
To be fair, driving 2 hours from Houston doesn't get you a whole lot of basketball arenas. It's not really the same.
That's fair. That's
the same
fair.
kind of atmosphere. All right, so Tahaad is going to have a big game. I got a couple of Houston Cougars going to have a big game.
Yes.
But I also think we're going to look at some new faces that might have some big games here in just 1 second. But before we get too far, we should point out that it is going to happen this Sunday, which is the weekend. And as you look back and crown the week's MVP, you look at who delivered, powered by DoorDash. And last week, you can win every Saturday with DoorDash, saving more every time you order. These players delivered when it matters most. We're going to break it down. I'm going with Houston's freshman, Kingston Flemings. Big 19 points the other night on Wednesday night. He just moves at a really fast pace. And his recruitment's been strong, but I'm assuming Auburn's got something going on with so many new faces.
Yeah, I'll go with Keyshawn Hall. He's the first Auburn player to start a season with 3 straight 20-point games since Auburn had KT Harrell do that in 2014. So strong start. Safe to say, Parker Ainsworth, he's delivering.
He has delivered, and you can have delivery each and every week with DoorDash, just like Hall or Flemings have been delivering for the Cougs and Tigers. DoorDash delivers your Saturdays with DoorDash Streaks. You save every Saturday order. Second up all season, and you can save up $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Turn apply, and the promo code only goes through November 18th, so get in on it today, guys. All right, so new faces, lots of new names in Auburn. There's a couple key ones in Houston we'll hit too, but Keyshawn Hall was your DoorDash streaking player, and 20 points out the gate, 3 in a row. is it gonna fall off this weekend? Like Houston's big,
probably
part of their defense.
Yeah, and I hate to make anything about officiating, but I think how they call this game on Sunday is going to impact Keyshawn Hall the most. I mean, he's been so good at getting to the free throw line. Houston's going to be more physical than any team Auburn's played so far this season, obviously. And so what does that look like for Hall? I mean, he's been solid and really, really good in the Big 12 a year ago. I think he led in points per game in the Big 12 a year ago. So this isn't like unfamiliar territory to him. But I think his ability to consistently score 20 relies on him getting the calls and getting to the free throw line. And so, yeah, how it's called for Hall on Sunday will be important.
Well, and positionally, he'll be matching up likely with Emmanuel Sharp, who's also a veteran and covered him some at UCF when they met a year ago. In the game that Houston and Auburn played a year ago, I wouldn't have called that Emmanuel's best game. I do think he played pretty well against Central Florida when Hall was there, but it's not really the exact same setup around him. I want to talk about freshmen, and not just because you've got one from Houston. I think a key player for Houston is actually going to be at the other guard spot, though, the one we hadn't really alluded to, and that is Kingston Flemings, the guy I picked for my DoorDash streaking player, because he functions as a second point guard, and he's a tremendous defender. He's 6'3" and long. He's super fast. Has had a couple highlight dunks in each game they played so far. Obviously, the rim protection will be a little bit different against Shaw than it was against Oakland University. I wonder, who's your third guard? Who covers someone with that much speed when you already have two returning all Big 12 players at the other two spots?
Yeah, probably Overton. I think Kevin Overton's probably, I mean, he's your typical like glue guy. Like I think any of these teams that go for a run in the postseason, they've got several guys that are like Kevin Overton who have the ability to pop off and get hot, have the ability to play solid defense, but they're usually the third, fourth, fifth guy on their rosters. That's what made Auburn's team last year so good, obviously. So I think Kevin Overton kind of fits that as a dude who you can ask to do maybe a little bit more than you probably should defensively. And then we'll see how effective he gets as far as scoring goes against this pretty solid Houston defense.
So new faces, I guess. Sampson is an old face. He won his 800th game as a college basketball coach of the day. That I would point out to an Auburn fan, like he took some time off after some stuff in Indiana as well, and still has gotten to 800. Right?
It's incredible. Yeah,
it's a lot of wins, and frankly, at programs that before he got there, Houston had the 80s, I guess, but we're not winning programs when he got there. And in looking at the inverse, a guy that has not even coached 8 games, let alone 800 wins, in Auburn's Stephen Pearl. Do you have any hesitation in Stephen stepping in as a rookie, fresh, however you want to put it, coach?
Yeah, I mean, this is his first opportunity, right? One of my regular guests that comes on several times a week, Daryl Dapprich, he made the point when we talked about this earlier about how all the pressure's on Houston. And he and I disagreed a little bit because I'm like, I think there's going to be some pressure that Stephen's going to put on himself because this is his first chance. Like you only get one shot at the first time you play the number one team in college basketball. You're not getting that again. And what a great opportunity it would be for him to make a statement because, I mean, as you could assume, like there was some pushback in the Auburn fan base of like, oh, he didn't earn it. Oh, Auburn's a better job than a guy who's just going to come in and who has never been a head coach anywhere. Like, obviously, those have been storylines that he's aware of. And just for the record, for Houston folks, like I think he should have been named coach in waiting a year ago, personally. But I forgot where he said it, but there were some quotes going around where he talked about like he was asked about coaching against Kelvin Sampson because they've got a relationship, and he talked about like, you know, it's going to be awesome, you know, kind of crazy coaching against, you know, one of his idols and mentors growing up. And I'm like, we don't need that. Like, you know, like shake that off real quick,
real fast.
but to say that that's not going to have an impact, 800 wins versus 3, that's doesn't get more lopsided than that for sure.
I can't imagine more. Yeah, it's interesting too because Houston finds themselves kind of in a similar spot in that Kelvin's son, is the head coach in waiting, is going to get the gig. It's very well discussed.
I think that's the proper way to handle it.
It's
yes.
a very well discussed thing in the program, and frankly, he gets things like, I'm sure he's the lead scout for the Auburn game this weekend. Like he when he put assistants on the job or whatever, right? If you'd have told me Auburn was hiring a guy that had been a lead assistant for 2 Final Four teams in Stephen, I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Leaving out the nepotism potential aspect or whatever, like just the resume itself is a pretty strong for a guy that had never been a head coach before, especially given what Auburn was before all of this, right?
Well, here's the crazy thing about these two coaches. When you add up both their wins together, like there's still over 800 total wins involved in this matchup between these coaches.
Yeah, that's how math works, I guess. crazy to consider. And frankly, one of them is undefeated as a head coach, I heard. So
that's true.
That's pretty
let's
impressive.
slap winning percentage on there.
Yeah, let's throw that number.
No, but coach is going to play a factor, right? And I'm curious to see some of the things that Stephen does. Even during the Pearl era, the Bruce Pearl era, excuse me, like it was kind of seeing that Stephen was a big part of these defensive game plans, which that was a big thing under Bruce. Is like if you're not going to play defense, you're not going to play. Stephen was a big part of that. And I'm curious to see what they do, especially when we talked about where a potential mismatch could be as far as, around the rim. Auburn's done a lot of that 1-3-1 defense, and I bet that changes on Sunday. I bet we see them do a lot more than what they've done the first 3 games so far this year, and I'm looking forward to seeing what that looks like.
Well, and you wonder what indications there were that Stephen Pearl would run a lot of zone. Now, Auburn personnel and Oakland University personnel are very different. But one thing, like Oakland ran a zone for all 40 minutes, even though Houston destroyed it, right? And so, I wonder if Kelvin was also working through his own stuff against the zone. Having seen, it'll be interesting to see how much of that plays out into this weekend, given whatever he knew about Stephen Pearl going in, because you mentioned they are close. As a new face, I guess I want to talk expectations too a little bit, because last year, these two teams met. It was like the most electric game of November by and large. It was
one of the best games of the year. Yeah,
it was a great game, and it started off the season. It was the first weekend of the season. It was awesome, and Houston on the wrong side of it. And I mean, that don't need to relitigate, but it happened, right? And
let's spend some time there for a second. Like Auburn did win that game.
Yeah, well, and to be fair, after that, I'd argue Houston went to the drawing board and fixed it. Hey, your stuff does stink. You got to go fix some stuff. Houston. Right. They went 4-3 in November and finished the year 35-5. I mean, they figured some stuff out after that and went forward, right? And then Auburn catapulted themselves to another Final Four. And I don't mean this negatively. They're not a program that goes to a Final Four a whole lot. They went twice in 6 years.
All their success has been recent, for sure.
Yeah.
Or way back, right?
Do you think that this weekend does the same for both? Is it kind of the same measuring stick? Is it like do you have expectations to get back to the Final Four if you win this weekend?
It probably depends on who you ask. I mean, I don't think this is a Final Four roster right now. I don't. I do see how they could take proper steps forward, and if certain guys get hot at the right time. I'm real concerned about teams that have size, which in the SEC you're going to see a lot of, and then in most rounds of the tournament you're going to see a lot of that. So I need to see it. I need to see what they do. This team offensively has the firepower to score with almost anybody, especially if they're on. I want to see the defense kind of come together. So do I think Auburn has a chance to make the Final Four if they beat Houston? Possibly, because if you could beat Houston, you could beat anybody. But I don't think would make those questions fully go away.
Well, and I weirdly feel like this is going to be Houston's trying to tell everyone they're better than they were last year. And it's hard to believe that a team that was 60 seconds from a national title got better. They did bring in a top-end recruiting class, return 3 starters. My audience heard that a lot, but they're in a really cool spot as far as all that goes. To me, it's hard to make that argument if you don't win this weekend, right? Not just because you lost to them a year ago, but because of all the newness and turnover and all of that at Auburn. Yeah. I do kind of think that there will be a back to the drawing board no matter how the game goes, but a setback could really kind of drive some of that home. And that might be good for Houston, bluntly. I mean, sometimes you need those kind of early season things to be playing your best basketball in February, March, and hopefully April. I want to get into more about how this game itself is going to go and make some picks here for a second. So we kind of alluded to Tahaad, Pettiford, or Kingston Flemings. We alluded to the size and the matchup. But before we get to all that, Zach, there are going to be a number of NBA players or prospects in this game, I think.
Sure.
And the NBA is back. There's no better place to get in on the NBA action than with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. And even if you miss the start of a game and want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets and everything from who will score to fourth quarter comebacks. We need quarters in basketball, in college basketball. I kind of like the hat. Anyway, plus you can combine your bets until the same game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. Keeps every game exciting, especially when your team is making a late push. You can get on the game in college football. And Iron Bowl's coming up, right? In big college football games, pro football games. They tell me hockey's a thing. I don't watch a lot of hockey, but it's a thing apparently. College basketball, pro basketball, whatever. It's all exciting over at FanDuel. Right now, FanDuel's giving new customers $300 in bonus bets. Your first $5 bet hits. Head to FanDuel.com, sign up, and play your game with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Zach, NBA players aside, talk to me about, you mentioned Todd Pettiford, and honestly, Miles Hughes fouls out. He gets 12 points in 4 minutes, or it felt like a blur. And I don't, some of that has been suppressed in my own memory bank, being really honest. And then Auburn won last year. Is it going to be that kind of nip and tuck this year, or what are you seeing happen?
Yeah, I mean, I think Houston's going to want to slow it down, keep it in the 50s and 60s. If you can get to 70, you win. And I think Auburn's going to want to run. And so who's going to be able to dictate pace so far? I think Auburn's scoring in the 90s every game. And then I think they're allowing like in the 60s on average. Houston scoring in the 70s. They're allowing, I think, 50 points per game. And it's probably going to live somewhere in the middle of those. And so who adapts to that? I think Auburn's going to be able to go through a few runs where they're able to score on Houston. And that's no disrespect to Houston. I just think Auburn's got guards and wings that are going to be able to get hot at some point. And I'm really banking on Tahaad. I'm really banking on Keyshawn Hall to even if they don't get to 20, like, can they combine for 30 as a tandem? And like, I don't think that's a crazy ask with the way they can play. So I think it's going to be, I think it might be similar. What was the final for last year's game? Do you remember?
It was a 5-point game. I remember off the top of my head, it was a 5-point game because I remember being like, at one point, they were 4-3 at the end of November and lost like all 3 games by combined 12 points or something.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting. So Houston's returners, Miles Hughes, Emmanuel Sharp, JoJo Tugler in the starting lineup. Returning.
It was 74-69, and I think it's going to be pretty close to that.
But Houston's returners were undefeated in true road games last year, and so I weirdly feel like it almost like helps zero focus those guys in a lot of ways. I think a big determining factor is going to be the other 2 starters for Houston are freshmen. And they're both future pros. I don't mean that in a slight in terms of talent, but if Birmingham will Birmingham like I think it could, it's going to be a real test for those 2 guys, right? And I think we're going to know pretty early based on like, is that first shot an air ball or is that first shot a dunk? Like what is how do they raise their game to that? Because we haven't seen it. Houston played home games, haven't played a big team like this at all. It'll be a different kind of – I think they've got the talent to win this game, and I still think I'm picking them to win this game. I just think that seeing those freshmen play their first – I'm calling it a road test. You admitted that this is not quite a home game. It's 2 hours away.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be a big factor in this one.
Yeah. This is this series has become kind of interesting, right? Because these 2 teams played in a tournament game a few years ago in Birmingham, correct?
Correct. And the game that Houston probably should have lost. They pulled it out at the end with Tremont Mark, but probably should have lost.
Yeah, I mean that team was. I watched the first half of that game in a hospital room. But I think
a happy hospital room. You're having a kid.
yeah. Good reason to be there for sure. For sure. And then I came home and did the post-game show. But the versus when I had my 3rd kid, I did the post-game show just from the hospital room when Auburn beat the Creighton to go to the Sweet 16. Yes, it's like, yeah. No, I think this series is interesting because there seems to always be so much on the line. Like even if it's not, an NCAA tournament game. It's still like battling for legitimacy or to stay on top of the college basketball world and kind of prove it. But like the truth of the matter is, like, if you look at what Alabama and Purdue did last night, like the loser of that game, which was Alabama, like it doesn't matter. It helps Purdue, but it doesn't hurt Alabama. And it's the same whoever, drops this one. So I'm excited. I think Auburn wins. I'm going to go 71-68. I think Auburn drops a stunner on the Houston Cougars.
Well, and Stephen Pearl would get, all of the early hole shot, coach of the year kind of commentary after that, bringing a new roster together and in a fourth game as a head coach or whatever.
Well, I like the sound of that, Parker. I like the sound of that.
I am picking Houston, and I'm going to, as much as I talk about the roster of freshmen or having so many freshmen on the roster for Houston, kind of pulling back those veterans, those three veterans plus Kelvin, I think, weigh a lot here. They weren't, like I said, undefeated on the true road games last year. I think it's going to feel more like that than a tournament game would. And frankly, in that count, I guess I would kind of feel like Toyota Center probably should have felt like a home game last year, but they lost that one, right? I think that's going to help, and the veteran coaching is going to help in this, and Sam's going to have stuff in his back pocket, whether it's a coverage here, an inbounds play there, or whatever, that they kind of swing this thing late. I do think it's going to be nip and tuck down the wire late.
I hope so. Those are the kind of games that make you better as a team. That's why you play these types of games early in the year, is to get ready for your conference play. So, yeah, I hope it's back and forth. I hope it's a close game throughout. And, yeah, I mean, I hope both teams kind of are able to benefit from this.
Yeah, and I think that if you look at you're looking at a game around 70 to around 67, 68 or whatever, I don't think either team has to get dinged super hard in the next 8 people. Yeah, 6-7. There you go. You do this thing. We do this thing. We do that. Yeah. That's the thumbnail. 6-7. 6-7.
Don't make that your thumbnail.
Anyway, I think that both teams should still be fairly respecting the AP poll Monday. I think you should encourage the programs to play these kind of matchups.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm glad they're doing it.
Yeah, me too.
I'm glad we got to take a shot at Alabama losing as well somewhere in the middle of this, because that's always a little bit of fun. Zach, y'all
wish it happened more. Not gonna lie to you. Wish it happened more.
Y'all got a coaching search going on. What's the layup? People are following you over at Locked on Auburn for all that, right? What are you talking about these days with that?
Yeah, I mean, is it John Sumrall or is it the field? Is it somebody else? That's kind of been the big question, the big debate. And then everybody asks, what is up with your love fest with John Sumrall? And I'm like, I've consistently said I would pick other people, but whatever.
Go figure out who those other people are and why. Because I think my audience probably assumes it should be John Sumrall, but we'll talk about it later over at Locked on Auburn. Locked on Cougars and basketball season. Football. It's a bye week for football program, and we're back in action next week with some in-state rivalries, TCU and Baylor, to finish the season. Fun stuff over there. Locked on Cougs, Locked on Auburn. Your first, second, third, every listen of the day. Appreciate you making us those listens as the Locked on Podcast Network, the #1 podcast network in the world. Keep it up, Zach. Go Cougs.
Thanks, buddy. You too. War Eagle.
I got to figure out these Eagle stories more.
Yeah. We beat Baylor for y'all. You're welcome.